Hello, I'm Deborah Telford and I'm a PhD student at the University of Auckland. Thank you for joining me today as we dive into the important topic of adolescent well-being. Adolescence is often perceived as a healthy time of life. However, many health conditions have their onset during this life stage. Globally, an estimated 10 to 30% of adolescents have a chronic health condition, and 1 in 7 have a diagnosed mental health disorder. So adolescent well-being is a key issue for global health. Adolescence is a period of rapid change which can present challenges for some. Sadly, it is common for health behaviours to be affected, with a decline in sleep and physical activity. However, this is also a time of great opportunity. Practicing healthy behaviour patterns during this period can help young people to cope with the stresses which they face during their teenage years and beyond. As illustrated here, young people can be bombarded with many demands on their time and energy, which can be overwhelming. So health messaging needs to target the behaviours that matter most for overall well-being. However, quality of life as a measure of well-being has not been widely studied in adolescence, and research has tended to focus more on specific health outcomes. Quality of life questionnaires can provide a measure of overall well-being across multiple health dimensions. Research has shown that sleep duration and physical activity are positively associated with quality of life in adolescents. However, few studies have used device-based measures of physical activity to assess relationships with quality of life, and dose-response relationships are not well understood. We wanted to know how much extra sleep or physical activity would be associated with a meaningful difference in well-being in adolescents. We also wanted to understand whether there are benefits associated with simply moving more, or if a moderate to vigorous intensity of physical activity is required for well-being. To answer these questions, we aimed to estimate the increases in sleep, moderate to vigorous physical activity, and total physical activity that were associated with a minimal important difference in quality of life in New Zealand adolescents. We recruited 12 to 17-year-olds from Auckland, New Zealand, through advertising in schools and community locations. Those who volunteered to take part wore an active PAL accelerometer attached to the leg for 7 days to assess posture and movement. They also completed a sleep and activity diary and an online questionnaire. The Kidscreen 27 questionnaire was used to assess quality of life. Total physical activity was defined as total stepping time. Moderate to vigorous physical activity was defined as stepping with a cadence of at least 100 steps per minute, and sleep was assessed using ActivePAL in conjunction with the sleep diary. We performed multiple linear regression with quality of life as the response variable. 2 models were compared. The first model included moderate to vigorous physical activity and sleep, whilst the second included total physical activity and sleep as explanatory variables. The analysis included 144 participants with an average age of 14.7 years. 58% were female, 38% male, and 4% gender diverse. On average, the participants slept approximately 8 hours a day, and their total physical activity averaged 2 hours a day, including 28 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity. Here are the results for quality of life based on the Kidscreen questionnaire. The total sample mean was 44.9, which was below the norm for this age group, shown here with the dotted line, which is based on European data. If we now look at the distributions for males and females, for females shown in gold, the scores were lower than for males shown in blue. However, for both genders, the average quality of life score was below the respective norm value, shown here for females and for males. In the regression analysis, the models were stratified by gender, as there were significant interactions between gender and physical activity. In both males and females, sleep predicted quality of life. However, the results for physical activity and moderate to vigorous physical activity differed between genders. First, let's look at the results for males. We found that total physical activity was not a significant factor, whilst moderate to vigorous physical activity was significant. So model 1 was the best fit. and this explained 33% of the variance in quality of life scores. We defined a minimally important difference in quality of life as 50% of one standard deviation in the Kidscreen score. This was predicted by 1.8 hours of extra sleep. This graph shows the distribution of time spent sleeping for males. The arrow on the graph shows the approximate scale of the change in sleep that was associated with a meaningful change in the quality of life score. That same change in quality of life was predicted by an increase of 36 minutes of moderate to vigorous physical activity, which is shown in the graph on the right. Moving on to the results for females, moderate to vigorous physical activity did not predict quality of life. However, total physical activity was significant. So in this case, Model 2 was a better fit, explaining 45% of the variance in quality of life scores. The changes in behavior that predicted a minimally important difference in quality of life were 1.7 hours of sleep or 42 minutes of total physical activity. This study has a few limitations to be aware of. Firstly, as participation was voluntary, there is a risk of sampling bias. Secondly, as it was cross-sectional, we can't make inferences about the direction of relationships. And thirdly, as we needed to stratify the models by gender, we were unable to include our gender-diverse participants in the analysis. So, returning to our original questions, we found that, broadly speaking, an extra half an hour of sleep plus half an hour of physical activity taken together predicted a meaningful difference in quality of life. However, regarding the importance of physical activity intensity, we found that the intensity associated with quality of life may depend on individual factors such as gender. Future studies may look to longitudinal and experimental designs to confirm these relationships and to determine how we can provide opportunities for enhancing adolescent well-being through movement in the future. And thank you for listening. We now have a couple of minutes for questions.